A 15-year-old girl walked into a boardroom full of executives. "You know nothing about this business," the CEO laughed, dismissing her with a wave. But when she spoke her father's name, his smile died, and the room exploded. Lily Bennett was 15 years old when she walked into the Thornton Consulting Group headquarters, wearing her best clothes. A blazer from Goodwill and shoes she'd borrowed from her mom because hers had holes in the soles. The receptionist had looked at her like she was lost. "Sweetie, if you're looking for the Career Day program, that's next month." "I have a meeting," Lily had said, showing the email on her phone. "Conference room A, 3 p.m. Now she stood outside that conference room, looking through the glass walls at 12 executives in expensive suits, and tried to remember why she'd thought this was a good idea. Because your father would want you to try. Because Noah needs to see that fighting matters. Because Mom can't keep working 2 jobs forever. Lily pushed open the door. 12 faces turned toward her. Most looked confused. A few looked annoyed. One man at the head of the table, silver hair, sharp suit, the kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes, looked amused. "Can we help you?" he asked. "The high school interns don't start until summer." "I'm not an intern," Lily said, her voice steadier than she felt. "I'm Lily Bennett. I emailed about the Anderson account, the retail restructuring proposal." The man's smile widened. "You're the Bennett who's been flooding my inbox with business plans?" He looked at the other executives. "I thought it was spam. Didn't realize it was a kid playing businesswoman." Several people laughed. Lily felt heat rise to her face, but forced herself to stay calm. "I'm not playing," she said. "I have a solution to the Anderson problem. If you just look at my analysis—" "Sweetheart," the man interrupted, leaning back in his chair like he had all the time in the world to humiliate her. "Do you know how many consultants we have working on the Anderson account? 30. All with MBAs from Harvard, Wharton, Stanford. And you think a 15-year-old who probably hasn't even taken economics yet can solve a problem they can't?" "I'm a sophomore at Boston Latin," Lily said. "I've been studying business strategy since I was 11. And yes, I think I can solve it. Because I understand something your consultants don't." Richard Thornton. She recognized him now from the website, the CEO who'd built this company into a powerhouse, gestured grandly. "Please, enlighten us. What do you understand that 30 MBAs don't?" Lily pulled out her laptop. Her hands were shaking, but she managed to connect it to the conference room display. Her presentation appeared on the screen. Slides she'd built using her father's old research notes, every night after homework, every weekend, while her mom was at work. "Anderson Retail is failing because they're treating their distribution problem like a logistics issue," Lily began, reading from notes her father had written years ago. "But it's not. It's a behavioral economics problem masked as supply chain inefficiency." She clicked to the next slide, her father's diagrams that she'd digitized. Data, charts, patterns he'd identified before he got sick. "This analysis was done by Michael Bennett in 2014, Lily explained. "He predicted exactly what would happen to Anderson if they didn't change course. And he was right. Your consultants are recommending they consolidate warehouses and cut staff. But that's treating the symptom, not the disease. The real problem is that Anderson's middle management is making decisions based on outdated incentive structures that reward individual performance over system efficiency." Lily pulled up another slide. "If you restructure their compensation model to reward collaborative problem-solving instead of individual metrics and implement a decentralized decision-making framework at the distribution level, you'll see a 30% increase in efficiency without cutting a single job." The room had gone quiet. People were actually looking at her slides now instead of checking their phones. "Furthermore," Lily continued, her confidence growing, "this approach has a proven track record. There are 3 case studies from 2018 through 2020 that demonstrate—" "Enough," Richard interrupted. His amusement was gone. Now he just looked irritated. "This is very cute, really. You made some PowerPoint slides and found a few case studies online. But you know nothing about this business, kid. Go back to high school and let the adults handle consulting? I know more than you think, Lily said quietly. Do you? Richard stood up, walking around the table toward her. Do you know how to negotiate a 7-figure contract? Do you know how to manage 30 consultants? Do you know what it takes to build a company from nothing? He was trying to intimidate her, standing too close, using his height and age and authority to make her feel small. But Lily looked up at him and said, I know what it takes to steal one. The room went completely silent. Excuse me? Richard's voice was low, dangerous. This company, Lily said, her voice shaking now, but not with fear, with rage. Thornton Consulting Group. It wasn't built from nothing. It was built on someone else's foundation, someone else's clients, someone else's methodologies. You need to leave, Richard said. Now. Lily's courage faltered. For a moment, she was just a 15-year-old girl who'd borrowed her mom's shoes, standing in a room full of adults who didn't want to hear her. She could feel tears starting. Maybe this was stupid. Maybe she should just go home. But then she thought about her father, about how he'd trusted this man, how he'd died never knowing the truth. Bennett and Thornton Partners, Lily said, her voice stronger now. That was the original name. That was the original name. 15 years ago. 2 founders, Michael Bennett and Richard Thornton. They built a consulting firm together, pioneered new approaches to organizational behavior, won contracts with Fortune 500 companies. We're on track to become one of the most respected firms in Boston. A woman at the table, maybe 50, with kind eyes and a worried expression, leaned forward. How do you know about Bennett and Thornton? Because Michael Bennett was my father, Lily said. Richard's face had gone pale. And 10 years ago, Lily continued, when my father got sick, when he had to take time off for his recovery, his partner convinced him to sell his shares, told him the company was struggling, that it would be better for everyone if Richard bought him out. My dad trusted him, believed him, sold his 50% stake for $100,000 so he could pay for medical bills. Lily pulled up a new slide. A contract. Faded. Scanned from old papers her mother had kept in a box in their closet. 6 months after my dad sold his shares, Thornton Consulting got a $10 million contract with Anderson Retail. A contract my father had been developing for 2 years. A contract that turned this company into what it is today. She looked directly at Richard. My father died 4 years ago, believing he'd made a smart business decision, that he'd gotten out at the right time. He never knew that the partner he trusted had lied to him, had stolen everything he'd built. That's not, Richard started, then stopped himself. That's ancient history twisted by a child who doesn't understand how business partnerships work. Your father made a decision, a legal, binding decision. If he had regrets, that's not my problem. But you lied to him, Lily said. You told him. I told him the truth as I saw it, Richard interrupted. The company was struggling. Your father was sick, distracted. I had to make hard decisions to keep us afloat. Buying his shares was the best option for everyone. Except 6 months later, you had a $10 million contract, Lily shot back. Richard's jaw tightened. Business opportunities arise. That's not deception. That's timing. I have documentation, Lily interrupted. She clicked through slides, emails, meeting notes, contract proposals, all with Michael Bennett's name on them, all dated before he sold his shares. Every methodology this company uses, my father developed it. The behavioral economics approach, that was his doctoral thesis. The decentralized decision-making framework, he published a paper on it in 2012. She looked around the room. This entire company is built on my father's ideas, and nobody even knows his name anymore. The woman who'd asked about Bennett and Thornton stood up. I'm Helen Park. I worked with your father 15 years ago. She looked at Richard, then back at Lily. I remember things differently than how they've been told. Dr. Park, sit down, Richard warned. I remember Michael Bennett being brilliant, Helen continued quietly. And I remember a lot of conversations that happened when he wasn't in the room. She didn't say more, but the implication hung heavy in the air. "That's enough," Richard snapped. "This meeting is over. Lily, you need to leave immediately or I'm calling security." "Why?" Lily asked. "Because I'm telling the truth? Because I'm proving that you built your empire on stolen ideas? You're a child who doesn't understand how business works," Richard said. His voice was shaking now. "Your father sold his shares voluntarily. Legal contract. He made his choice." "He made his choice because you lied to him," Lily's voice cracked. "You told him the company was failing when you knew the Anderson contract was coming through. You exploited his desperation. He was sick. We were drowning in medical bills. And you—" Tears were streaming down her face now. "You took advantage of that. You stole from a dying man." The room was frozen. Several executives were staring at Richard with new expressions. Shock, disgust, realization. "I was only 11 when my dad died," Lily continued. "The last thing he told me was to be smart in business, to never trust people who value money more than integrity. And I didn't understand what he meant until I found his old files, until I realized what you'd done to him." She closed her laptop. "I didn't come here for the Anderson account. I came here to prove that I inherited my father's mind, that his ideas live on, that he mattered." Lily looked at Richard. "And I came to let you know. I'm not going away. I'm going to make sure everyone knows that Thornton Consulting was built on Bennett methodologies, that every success you claim started with my father's work." "Get out," Richard said. But his voice had no power now. He just sounded scared. As Lily walked toward the door, Helen Park followed her into the hallway. "Lily, wait!" Lily turned, wiping tears from her face. Helen looked around to make sure they were alone. "What you said in there about your father, I need to think about some things. There are files I kept. Things I wasn't sure mattered at the time." She paused. "Can I have your email? If I find what I think I might find, you'll want to see it." "Why are you helping me?" Lily asked. "Because your father believed in me when nobody else did," Helen said quietly. "And because maybe it's time I believed in doing what's right, instead of what's safe." Lily left Thornton Consulting Group that afternoon, feeling like she'd climbed a mountain. Her legs were shaking. Her hands were trembling. But she'd done it. She'd looked her father's betrayer in the eye and told him the truth. On the subway home, Lily's hands were still shaking. She'd done it. She'd actually confronted Richard Thornton. But now what? She had documents. But who would listen to a 15-year-old? That evening, while Lily sat at dinner with her mom and Noah, explaining what had happened, her phone buzzed. One new email. From Email Protected. Subject: Bennett and Thornton Story. Ms. Bennett, I'm Amanda Brooks with the Boston Business Journal. I've been investigating Thornton Consulting for 6 months. Rumors of unethical practices, stolen methodologies, consultants who left due to concerns about integrity. I heard you were at their office today. I'd like to talk. This could be the story that changes everything. Amanda. Lily stared at the email. Then she thought about her father, about the way he used to explain business strategy at the dinner table, turning napkins into diagrams, teaching her and Noah that solving problems was about understanding people, not just numbers, about how he'd apologized before he died, apologized for not leaving them with more, for not being successful enough, for selling his shares when maybe he should have fought. He'd thought he'd failed, but he'd actually created something brilliant, something worth $10 million, something worth fighting for. Lily typed a response. I'll talk. I have documentation, and I want the truth to come out. Sent. By the time she got home, Amanda had responded with a meeting time. By the time she sat down for dinner with her mom and Noah, explaining what had happened, Rachel was crying and laughing at the same time. Your father would be so proud, Rachel said. You stood up to Richard Thornton, 15 years old, and you walked into that boardroom like you owned it. I was terrified, Lily admitted. Being brave doesn't mean not being scared, Rachel said. It means doing the right thing anyway. Noah, who'd been quiet through the whole explanation, looked at his sister with big eyes. "Are you going to get Dad's company back?" "I don't know," Lily said honestly, "but I'm going to make sure everyone knows it was his, that Dad created those ideas, that he mattered." Across Boston, in his penthouse office, Richard Thornton sat alone. His phone kept ringing. Board members, major clients, people who'd seen executives leaving the meeting early, talking, spreading the story of the 15-year-old girl who'd accused him of theft. Helen Park had resigned effective immediately. 3 other executives had requested emergency meetings with HR. And worst of all, Richard had Googled Michael Bennett consultant and found his old partner's obituary. Michael Bennett, 45, passed away after a 4-year battle with a serious illness. He is survived by his wife Rachel and children Lily and Noah. Michael was a visionary in organizational psychology and will be remembered by all who knew him as a man of integrity and brilliance. Richard had convinced himself that what he'd done was just business, that Michael had made a choice to sell, that the $100,000 had been fair compensation. But looking at that obituary, at the man who'd trusted him, who'd built a company with him, who died never knowing he'd been betrayed, Richard felt something he hadn't felt in years: shame, and the realization that a 15-year-old girl had just destroyed everything he'd spent a decade building. Because Lily Bennett had something Richard didn't: the truth. And in the age of social media, viral stories, and corporate accountability, truth was more powerful than money. The Boston Business Journal offices smelled like coffee and old paper. Lily sat across from Amanda Brooks in a small conference room, her mother beside her for support. Amanda had kind eyes but a reporter's sharp focus, the kind of person who noticed everything. "Tell me about your father," Amanda said, recorder on the table between them. Lily pulled out the folder she'd brought. Inside were papers her mother had kept in a storage box for years, things Rachel couldn't bear to look at after Michael died, but couldn't bring herself to throw away. "My dad was a consultant," Lily began, "but not the kind who just tells companies what they want to hear. He actually solved problems. He believed business should make people's lives better, not just make money." She showed Amanda the first document, a partnership agreement dated 15 years ago. Bennett and Thornton partners, 50-50 ownership. My dad and Richard Thornton were going to build something that mattered. They had this vision, consulting that focused on people, not just profits. Amanda studied the document, taking notes. "And what happened?" "My dad got sick," Lily said quietly. "He faced a very serious health challenge. Our insurance covered some of it, but we were drowning in bills. Physical therapy, medications, experimental treatments. We were desperate." Rachel's hand found Lily's under the table, squeezed. "Richard came to our house," Lily continued. "I was 5, so I don't remember it clearly, but my mom does. He brought flowers, told my dad that the company was struggling, that they weren't going to make it, that the best thing Michael could do for his family was sell his shares, use the money for his care, and not worry about a failing business. And your father believed him," Amanda said. "My dad trusted him," Lily corrected. "They were partners, friends, or so Dad thought." She pulled out another document, a check stub, $100,000, dated 10 years ago. 6 months after Dad sold his shares, Thornton Consulting got the Anderson retail contract, $10 million, using methodologies my father developed, and Dad never knew. He died 4 years ago thinking he'd made the smart choice, that he'd gotten out of a sinking ship. Amanda's pen moved rapidly across her notepad. "You said you have documentation proving these methodologies were your father's?" Lily pulled out her father's old notebooks, worn covers, pages filled with diagrams and notes in careful handwriting. Behavioral economics approaches to organizational change, decentralized decision-making frameworks. Everything Thornton Consulting is famous for, my dad invented it. These notebooks are dated between 2009 and 2014, before he sold his shares. Amanda photographed several pages. And you presented this at Thornton Consulting yesterday. I tried, Lily said. Richard dismissed me, called me a kid who didn't understand business. But one of the executives, Dr. Helen Park, she worked with my dad. She remembered. As if on cue, Lily's phone buzzed. Email from Helen Park. Lily, I found the files. Can we meet? Lily showed her mother. Rachel nodded. Can we pause the interview? Lily asked Amanda. I need to follow up on something. Actually, Amanda said. Mind if I come with you? This story is bigger than I thought, and I want to be there when the next piece falls into place. They met Helen at a coffee shop in Cambridge, far from Thornton Consulting's offices. Helen looked different than she had in the boardroom. Smaller somehow, less polished, like she'd been awake all night. She placed a flash drive on the table. 15 years of emails, Helen said. Meeting notes, contract proposals, all with timestamps and Michael's name as primary author. She looked at Lily with tired eyes. I kept them because I knew what Richard did was wrong, but I was scared. I had student loans, a mortgage, a career I couldn't afford to lose. Why now? Rachel asked. Because I watched a 15-year-old have more courage than I've had in a decade, Helen said simply. And because Michael Bennett deserved better than what we gave him. Amanda was already looking through the files on her laptop. Her eyes widened. This is incredible. Emails from Richard to investors describing Michael's methodologies as our approach. Contract proposals with Michael's analysis but only Richard's signature. Meeting notes where Richard explicitly tells people not to mention Michael's name to clients. She looked up at Lily. This isn't just unethical. This could be fraud. Will you write about it? Lily asked. I'll do better than that, Amanda said. I'll make sure the whole city knows what Richard Thornton really is. The article published online that evening. The Stolen Legacy of Michael Bennett, How Thornton Consulting Was Built on a Dying Man's Ideas. Lily read it on her phone while Noah did homework at the kitchen table. The story was comprehensive, devastating, fair. It included quotes from Helen, photographs of Michael's notebooks, copies of emails showing Richard systematically erasing Michael's name from company history. And it ended with a question. If Bennett's methodologies are the foundation of Thornton Consulting's success, what does the company owe his family? Within an hour, the story had been shared 3,000 times. By morning, it was trending on Boston Twitter. Lily's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Messages from strangers offering support, from reporters wanting interviews, from lawyers offering to help, and one text that made her hands shake. From Dr. Helen Park. I resigned this morning. So did 4 other executives who worked with your father. We can't be part of covering this up anymore. At Thornton Consulting headquarters, Richard Thornton sat in an emergency board meeting. 5 executives resigned overnight, the chairman said. Major clients are calling asking if the journal story is true. Our stock dropped 12% this morning. It's a hit piece, Richard insisted. 1 disgruntled former employee and a teenager with her father's old notebooks. It doesn't prove anything. It proves enough to raise questions, another board member said. Questions our clients are asking. Questions we can't answer. What do you want me to do? Richard demanded. We want you to tell us the truth, the chairman said quietly. Did you build this company on Michael Bennett's work? Richard was silent. Did you remove his name from contracts and proposals? The chairman pressed. Still silent. Did you lie to him about the company's prospects so you could buy his shares cheaply? It was more complicated than that, Richard finally said. That's not a denial, the chairman observed. The board voted that afternoon. Richard Thornton would step down as CEO, effective immediately, pending a full investigation into the company's founding. Lily learned about it from Amanda, who called as soon as the press release went out. He's gone, Amanda said. Stepped down an hour ago. The board is conducting a formal review of all contracts and methodologies to determine what originated with your father. Lily sat down. her legs suddenly weak. "We did it?" "You did it," Amanda corrected. A 15-year-old girl walked into a boardroom and told the truth. And the truth was powerful enough to bring down a CEO. That evening, the family gathered in their small living room, Lily, Rachel, and Noah. "Mom," Noah asked, "does this mean we won?" Rachel pulled both her children close. "It means your father's name will be remembered. It means people know the truth. That's the most important kind of winning." "What happens now?" Lily asked. "I don't know," Rachel admitted. "But your father would be so proud of you, both of you, for being brave, for fighting for what's right." Noah looked at his sister with wide eyes. "You made the CEO quit. That's so cool." Despite everything, Lily laughed. "I just told the truth, Noah. That's all." "Yeah, but it was Dad's truth," Noah said. "And now everybody knows." Lily's phone buzzed again. Another email. This one from a law firm. "Ms. Bennett, we represent several executives who worked with your father at Bennett and Thornton Partners. They're interested in discussing restitution for the Bennett family and proper attribution of your father's work. Would you be willing to meet?" Lily showed her mother. Rachel read it twice, tears streaming down her face. "Restitution. They want to pay us for what they stole from your father." "Is that okay?" Lily asked. "Taking money? Does it make it seem like Dad's legacy can be bought?" "Your father's legacy is his ideas," Rachel said firmly. "His belief that business should help people. His methodologies that actually work. That can't be bought." She wiped her eyes. "But we deserve compensation for what was taken from us. Your father would want us to be practical, not just principled." She looked at her daughter. 15 years old, braver than Rachel had ever been. "You did something I couldn't do," Rachel said. "You fought for him when I was too tired, too scared, too broken. You made sure his name mattered." "We did it together," Lily said. "You kept his notebooks. You remembered the truth. I just shared it." That night, Lily couldn't sleep. She opened her father's oldest notebook, the one from 2009, and read his handwriting. "Business Ethics, Day 1. The goal isn't to win. The goal is to solve problems in ways that make everyone better off. If you have to cheat, lie, or steal to succeed, you haven't succeeded. You've just moved the problem somewhere else." Underneath, a note in the margin. "Remember this, Lily. When you're older and you're making hard choices, character matters more than profit." He'd written her name in a business notebook from when she was 4 years old. Like he'd known. Like he'd always known she'd be the one to carry forward what he'd started. Lily took a photo of the page and posted it on social media with a simple caption. "My father, Michael Bennett, taught me that truth matters more than comfort." This week I learned he was right. And I learned that sometimes a 15-year-old's voice can be loud enough to change things. Don't let people tell you you're too young to matter. Don't let them dismiss your truth because you're not qualified. If you know something is wrong, say it. Even if your voice shakes. Especially if your voice shakes. "Dad, I hope I made you proud." Posted. By morning, it had 50,000 shares. By afternoon, news outlets across the country were picking up the story. And by evening, Lily Bennett, 15 years old, daughter of Michael Bennett, fighter for truth, had become the face of a conversation about ethics, integrity, and corporate accountability. All because she'd walked into a boardroom and refused to be silent. All because she'd loved her father enough to fight for his name. All because truth, in the end, was more powerful than any lie. The law offices of Morrison & Chen occupied the 23rd floor of a building overlooking Boston Harbor. Lily sat between her mother and their new attorney, a woman named Sarah Mitchell, who'd taken their case pro bono after reading Amanda's article. Across the conference table sat 3 representatives from Thornton Consulting's board, 2 corporate lawyers, and a mediator. Richard Thornton was not there. The board had made it clear. He was no longer welcome at negotiations concerning his own misconduct. "Let's begin," the mediator said. "Ms. Mitchell, You've submitted documentation supporting the Bennett family's claim that Michael Bennett's intellectual property forms the foundation of Thornton Consulting's methodologies. The board has reviewed this documentation. Mr. Harrison, would you like to respond? The lead board member, a man in his 60s with tired eyes, cleared his throat. We've conducted an extensive internal review, he said. Examined contracts, proposals, and meeting records from 2009 through 2016. The conclusion is, he paused, looking directly at Lily and Rachel, inescapable. Michael Bennett was the primary architect of what became Thornton Consulting's core approach. His name was systematically removed from documentation after he sold his shares, and the circumstances of that sale were, at minimum, ethically compromised. Rachel's hand found Lily's under the table. What does that mean? Lily asked. It means, Sarah said firmly, that your father's work was stolen, and Thornton Consulting owes your family compensation. The board's lawyer slid a document across the table. We're prepared to offer a settlement, $5 million, plus a formal public acknowledgement of Michael Bennett's contributions. Rachel gasped. Lily stared at the number, unable to process it. $5 million. More money than her family had ever imagined. More than enough to pay off their debts, to send both kids to college, to stop Rachel from working 2 jobs. But Sarah Mitchell didn't look impressed. $5 million is insulting, she said calmly. Thornton Consulting is valued at $200 million. 80% of their methodology came from Michael Bennett's work. You're offering 2.5% of what his contributions generated. We're also offering to rename the company, Mr. Harrison said quietly. Bennett Thornton Consulting, with Michael Bennett listed as founding partner in all materials. Lily looked at her mother. Rachel was crying, but trying to hide it. Can we have a moment? Sarah asked. The other side left the room. Sarah turned to Rachel and Lily. They're lowballing us, Sarah said bluntly. We could push for 20 million, maybe more, but litigation could take years, and there's no guarantee. What do you think we should do? Rachel asked. I think, Sarah said carefully, that you should ask yourselves what Michael would have wanted. Is this about the money, or about his name? Lily thought about her father's notebook. Character matters more than profit. It's about his name, Lily said. I want people to know who he was, what he created. That matters more than the money. But the money matters too, Rachel added softly. Michael would want his children to have opportunities, to not struggle the way we have. Sarah nodded. So we negotiate. Push them higher on the settlement, but accept the name change. Make sure Michael Bennett is remembered. When the board returned, Sarah was ready. $10 million, she said. Company renamed Bennett Thornton Consulting. Michael Bennett credited as founding partner and primary architect of all core methodologies. Annual scholarship in his name for students studying organizational psychology. And a formal public apology from the board acknowledging what was done to him. Mr. Harrison looked at his colleagues, whispered conversation. Then, we accept. Just like that, it was over. $10 million. Michael Bennett's name restored, his legacy preserved. Lily felt like she couldn't breathe. There's one more thing, Mr. Harrison said. The board would like to invite the Bennett family to a public ceremony next month, to formally recognize Michael's contributions and announce the company's renaming. We think, he paused, we think the public deserves to hear the whole story, and Michael's family deserves to tell it. Rachel looked at Lily. What do you think? I think Dad would want people to learn from this, Lily said. Would want other companies to see what happens when you steal from people who trust you. Then we'll be there, Rachel said. The ceremony was held 4 weeks later in the Boston Convention Center. 500 people attended. Business leaders, consultants, former employees of Bennett and Thornton Partners, reporters, students. The room was packed. Lily stood backstage with her mother and Noah, wearing a dress Rachel had bought specifically for this occasion. The first new dress Lily had owned in 2 years that wasn't from a thrift store. "I'm scared," Lily admitted. "You stood up to Richard Thornton in his own boardroom," Rachel reminded her. "You can do this." "But there are so many people." "They're here because of you," Rachel said. "Because you were brave enough to tell the truth. Now finish what you started." The moderator, a business ethics professor from Harvard, introduced Lily. "Today we're here to right a wrong that should never have happened. To restore the name of a man whose brilliance was stolen, whose trust was betrayed, whose legacy was nearly erased. And we're here because his daughter refused to let that erasure stand. Please welcome Lily Bennett." The applause was overwhelming. Lily walked to the podium on shaking legs. 500 faces looked back at her. Cameras recording. Reporters taking notes. She pulled out her father's notebook, the one from 2009, the one with her name in the margin, and placed it on the podium. "My name is Lily Bennett," she began, her voice barely audible, then stronger. "I'm 15 years old, and 4 years ago, my father, Michael Bennett, died believing he'd failed." The room was silent. "He thought he'd made bad business decisions, that he'd sold his company at the wrong time, that he hadn't provided enough for his family, and I believed that too. We all did." Lily opened the notebook to the page she'd bookmarked. "But then I found these, my father's notebooks, filled with ideas that changed how businesses think about people, about ethics, about doing well by doing good." She looked up at the audience. "And I realized my father hadn't failed. He'd been stolen from." She told the story. All of it. The partnership, the betrayal, the buyout when Michael was desperate and sick, the $10 million contract that came 6 months later. Richard Thornton's systematic erasure of Michael's name from everything he'd created. "My father trusted the wrong person," Lily said. "And that person took advantage of his trust, his illness, his desperation. Built an empire on my dad's ideas and never once gave him credit." She could see people in the audience wiping tears. "But here's what I learned. Truth is more powerful than theft. A 15-year-old with her father's notebooks and a refusal to stay silent can bring down a CEO who thought he was untouchable, because lies require everyone's cooperation, and truth only requires one person brave enough to speak it." Lily held up the notebook. "This is my father's handwriting, his ideas, his belief that business should make the world better. And now, finally, everyone will know these ideas were his." She looked directly at the camera she knew was streaming this live. "If you're watching this, and you're young, if people tell you that you don't matter because you're just a kid, don't believe them. Your voice matters. Your truth matters. Don't let anyone silence you because of your age, or your experience or anything else. If something is wrong, say it. Even if your voice shakes." The applause started before she finished speaking, a standing ovation that went on for minutes. When Lily returned to her seat, Noah hugged her tight. "That was amazing," he whispered. Then Mr. Harrison took the podium. "On behalf of the board of Thornton Consulting," he paused, "of Bennett Thornton Consulting, I want to formally apologize to the Bennett family. We failed Michael Bennett. We allowed his contributions to be erased. We benefited from his brilliance without acknowledging it. That ends today." He unveiled a plaque that would hang in the company's headquarters. Bennett Thornton Consulting, founded by Michael Bennett and Richard Thornton, 2011. Core methodologies developed by Michael Bennett, 2009, 2016. Character matters more than profit. Michael Bennett. The audience applauded again. After the ceremony, dozens of people approached Lily. Business leaders who wanted to share their own stories of being cheated. Students who said she'd inspired them. Reporters asking for interviews. But the person who surprised Lily most was standing at the back of the crowd. Richard Thornton. He looked different. Smaller. Older. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something that looked like genuine remorse. "I don't expect you to talk to me," Richard said quietly. I don't deserve that. But I wanted to be here, to witness what I tried to erase. Lily looked at the man who'd betrayed her father. Part of her wanted to scream at him, to make him feel the pain her family had felt. But she thought about her father's words. Character matters more